Hi, I'm Caro. Welcome to my very first YouTube video. Thank you for watching and thank you for giving me grace. I am a complete rookie at video editing. I apologize for all the instances when the audio and video are a bit out of sync. And I promise I'm much better at these techniques and at card making than at video editing. What I'm demonstrating is gel printing with a homemade texture plate. And I do this as part of the Altenew Educator Certification Program. This specifically is for my Level 2 challenge. The challenge consists of the creation of 4 cards for male recipients, as well as an upcycled object. And here's my texture plate. I created it with tissue paper and just some old cardboard. The tissue paper was folded multiple times and crumbled up, then glued onto the cardboard. And I tried to preserve as many of the folds as I possibly could. I glazed this with some gel medium. This makes it more rigid and more durable, and it also takes away the porous nature of the paper. And that is for longevity purposes, and I've already used this for years, and you probably can tell from the yucky color. But no worries, the color is dry, and so it can transfer to the gel plate. Anything dry does not transfer. Let's have a look at what we will create today with this homemade texture plate. Here are a few of those prints. Some of them are printed on old book pages and others are printed on color copying paper. I use color copying paper of varying weights for this purpose. In today's session I'm using 60-pound paper. This very last print that you see is one that features our texture plate but also some masking. And that is what we will do together. I will be using ink today on the texture plate, and that is very beginner friendly. So if you're new to this and you want to learn a little bit more about how to use texture plates on your gel press, please stick around. I think this will be helpful. Now I'm demonstrating my texture plate in action. Here I'm printing on old book pages. The words from those pages will not be covered, but they will add to the overall pattern that will emerge through the printing process. And it's free paper, which is a good thing when you're gel printing a lot. I'm using VersaFine Clear ink on my plate. In my experience, it works very well on the gel print. Of course, many inks do. And you also know, of course, that acrylic ink is one of the mediums that many gel printers use. That is, of course, more opaque. And here's now my texture plate, and I'm using it like a giant stamp if you want to, pressing it onto the plate, and I rotate to get more of the ink taken off. The ink comes off where the valleys of the folds hit the plate, and then I put my book page onto the plate and I make sure that it makes good contact. And because the book page is smaller than my 6x6 inch plate, I use a cleanup sheet, it is scrap paper. And I know that I want to use a second color for an additional print, therefore I also take my brayer and roll over this cleanup sheet. This helps get the ink off the brayer. In an ideal world, I wouldn't waste this ink, but I wanted to demonstrate a complete print here, and I want to use 2 colors for those prints. So here is the first color print that I get, and you can see some of these valleys where there is no paint, and now I make sure my plate is indeed clean of that light purple ink. And I also take my brayer and roll over this cleanup sheet again, just so that most of the purple is off. Then I take a second ink. With this light purple color, I choose a light blue. This is Warm Breeze. And I put it on the texture plate the same way I did before. Take my ink pad, put it directly onto the plate, and then I use the brayer again to roll out the ink, so I can layer a second print over the first one. So I will layer blue over purple. Here I take my texture plate and press it onto the gel plate, making sure it makes good contact, and then I rotate it again. I basically repeat the same steps. When choosing my layering colors, I choose colors that play well together, like here the blue and the purple, or red and purple, red and orange, yellow and green, green and blue. Unless I want a dull shade of brown or gray, I do not layer complementary colors like yellow and purple, or red and green, or blue and orange. We know this from color theory. Colors that are adjacent to each other on the color wheel create nice and vivid shades of another color, like here, the blue and the purple. And this is what my layered print of blue and purple looks like. Hope you like it. I had a longer play session with the gel plate, and here's a sampling of the prints that I made. The goal was to create prints in different shades and different values of blue and purple. I am stamping my focal image onto these prints using one of the flowers from the Build-A-Flower Cone Flower stamp set from Altenew. It is a layering stamp set. I will only use the outline image. I'm stamping the cone flower with obsidian ink. This will give me a crisp impression. I'm not using a stamp positioner, but a stamping block. Is this because I will use this for paper piecing, meaning the flower will be cut up? And if there were a part that wasn't stamped well, I simply wouldn't use that part. You can also see that I use the gel plate as my stamping surface. It is ideal for that, and since I had it out, I might as well take advantage of it. Once my stamped cone flowers are dry, I am cutting out some of the parts from them. I'm cutting out some petals from this flower here, other petals from other flowers, and yet other petals from other flowers, and leaves from some of the flowers, flower centers as well. I take my scissors and I cut all the way around the petal. I have to say I'm not good at doing this on camera, so I will not show you the entire fuzzy cutting process. I can tell you it was time consuming. The reason why I do this from different cone flowers is so that I get a variety of colors. Once I was done with the fuzzy cutting, I stamped the cone flower again onto cardstock. Then I took the different petals and the different parts of the flower that I had cut out, and I glued them onto the stamped flower. Then I cut it out using the corresponding die, and this is what the finished product looks like. I hope you like it. Paper piecing isn't the only technique I used with my prints. I intend to turn this one into a nature scene using some masking and stamping on the gel plate. Since this is a darker blue, I will also be using a darker purple for the layered print. I will be using Chianti ink. I will roll it out on my plate and then I'll put down masks onto the gel plate. The masks were created with the Just Leaves die set from Altenew. It's one of my all-time favorites. Masking on the gel plate you can do one of two ways. Either you can put the mask onto the plate as I'm doing here, or you can put them on the paper. If you choose the plate, you don't even need to use masking paper, although this here is masking paper. Once my masks are in place, I will use the coneflower stamp again, the same one we used for paper piecing, and I will stamp onto the gel plate. At this point the stamp is clean. There is no ink on the stamp, so it will not leave ink behind, but take some off of the plate and leave a flower image behind. Oh, as you can see, I was a little overzealous here and I took off more ink than I intended to do. But let's see whether this will still give me a usable print. So now when I put down the blueprint onto the gel plate, I have to be extra careful to make really good contact with the plate, especially between all those small leaves, to make sure I get a good impression. And while I have that paper on my plate, I will use another print and use the ink that was taken off the gel plate to print or to stamp the flower onto this print here. This one was meant to be a cleanup print, but there was a little bit of a ghost of some fern masking left behind, and this will give us a nice backdrop for the flower. It looks strange now, but once colored, the flower will be in the foreground and the fern appears to be in the background. So I can make use of this for another card. Now let's have a look at our masked print and see whether my overzealous stamping did ruin the print or whether it is still usable. As you can see, there was too much ink taken off around the flower, so I will not be using this as I had intended. I will have to find another use for this print. This means that I will repeat this process and I will take you along for the ride. I will use this light blue print here to repeat the process. It was created with the Warm Breeze ink, and the second tone comes from the darker blue Twilight. Rolled out on my gel plate, right now I have a color called Charming. It is a light pink. And now I put down my masks, the same mask that we used earlier, and then I take the same stamp and a little bit more cautiously I will stamp the coneflower again, taking off some of that pink ink that is right now on the gel plate. And as you can see, this time I get a clean impression. So now I can take my light blue print and put it over the gel plate, making sure I make good contact again, especially between the leaves and of course also where the flower is stamped. And then I will make use again of the ink that is on my floral stamp, and I will stamp it this time onto an envelope that I can use together with a card that has either the same or a similar floral image. So now let's have a look at this print here and see whether I get the scene that I wanted the first time around. And yes, this looks like a good print to me. What do you think? When I take off my mask, there is ink left behind, and I will make use of this ink to print another envelope. I put it on the bottom of the envelope and press it onto the gel plate the same way I would do with just a single sheet of paper. So here is the nature scene that we created on the gel plate. As you can see, the gel plate is great for mirror stamping. I took the same stamp and stamped it next to the printed flower. This way the flowers face each other, and I intend to use this print for my anniversary card. This concludes my very first video. Thank you so much for watching. If you're curious about the project, seeing the 4 cards and the upcycled item, please join me in the second part of this video. Thanks so much for watching. Take care.